There's a moment when the questions stop being questions and become keys. What if the doubt you've been running from is actually the doorway you've been searching for? The weight we carry. You've felt it, haven't you? That restlessness in the middle of certainty. That whisper in the back of your mind when everyone else seems so sure. When the world hands you an answer and something inside you refuses to swallow it whole, they tell you what to believe, how to live, what success looks like, what love should feel like, what God is, what you are, and for a while maybe you accept it. You wear the answers like borrowed clothes, hoping they'll eventually fit. But they don't. Because beneath the surface of every inherited truth, there's a quiet rebellion stirring, a small voice that says, "But is this mine? Did I choose this? Or was I simply told this was the way?" Most people silence that voice. They call it doubt, weakness, a lack of faith. They're taught that questioning is dangerous, that certainty is strength, that a mind that wanders is a mind that's lost. But here's what they don't tell you. The soul that questions is not lost. It's waking up. The cage of certainty is seductive. It promises safety, belonging, the comfort of knowing. When you're certain, you don't have to think anymore. You don't have to feel the weight of choice. You can simply follow the path that's been laid before you, step by predictable step. But certainty is also a cage, and the bars are made of other people's answers. Think about it. How many of the beliefs you hold were actually chosen by you? How many were inherited, absorbed, repeated so often they became invisible, like the air you breathe? Your ideas about success, your definition of happiness, your fears, your desires, even your sense of who you are. How much of it is yours? The Sufi poet Rumi once said, "Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment." Not because bewilderment is the goal, but because bewilderment is the beginning. When you stop pretending to know, you create space. Space for something truer to emerge. Space for your own voice to finally speak. The fear of falling, but questioning terrifies us. Because when you start to question, things fall apart. The structures you built your life on begin to crack. The beliefs you defended start to feel hollow. The identity you polished and protected begins to dissolve. And that feels like death. It feels like you're losing yourself. But here's the paradox. You're not losing yourself. You're losing what was never you to begin with. The ego, that protective shell we mistake for our identity, thrives on certainty. It needs to know. It needs to be right. It needs to defend its version of reality because without it, it fears it will disappear. And it's not wrong. The ego will dissolve. But you won't. Beneath the ego, beneath the borrowed beliefs and inherited fears, there's something unshakable. Something that doesn't need to be defended because it simply is. The mystics call it the soul. The philosophers call it the self. The scientists might call it consciousness. But whatever you call it, this is what remains when everything else falls away. The part of you that was there before you learned what to believe. The part that will be there after every belief has been questioned and released. That part of you, it's free. The first crack, freedom doesn't come from finding the right answer. It comes from asking the right question. Not the safe questions. Not the polite ones. Not the questions designed to confirm what you already believe. The dangerous questions. Why do I believe this? Is this true because it's true, or because I've been told it's true? What would I think if I had been born somewhere else, to different people in a different time? Who would I be if I stopped performing? These questions are uncomfortable. They disrupt. They unsettle. They threaten the carefully constructed world you've built. But they also liberate. Because every question you ask is a crack in the cage. And when enough cracks appear, the light gets in. The courage to not know. So here's where it begins. With the courage to not know. With the willingness to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty. To let go of the need to have all the answers. To admit that maybe you've been wrong about some things. Not because being wrong is bad, but because being open is essential. The soul that questions doesn't seek to destroy. It seeks to discover. It doesn't tear down out of anger. It deconstructs out of love. Love for truth, love for clarity, love for the real. And in that deconstruction, something miraculous happens. You start to see, not with your mind, which always wants to label and categorize and control, but with your awareness, with that quiet, still part of you that simply observes, that sees without judgment, that knows without needing to prove. This is where freedom lies, not in the answers, not in the certainty, not in the safety of knowing, but in the spaciousness of questioning. Your invitation. So let me ask you now, what have you been afraid to question? What belief have you been holding on to, not because it serves you, but because letting it go feels too dangerous? What would happen if you gave yourself permission to wonder? You don't have to have the answer. You just have to be willing to ask. Because the moment you do the moment, you allow yourself to truly question something, inside you shifts. The cage begins to open, and the soul, that eternal part of you that has always been free, remembers itself. This is where your journey begins, not with certainty, with curiosity. There's a kind of vertigo that comes with questioning. At first, it feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. Everything you've known, everything you've built your life upon, suddenly seems fragile, thin, as if one more question might cause the whole structure to collapse. And here's the truth, it might. But that's not the disaster you think it is. Because what collapses wasn't solid to begin with. It was a story, a collection of borrowed narratives, an architecture of assumptions held together by repetition and fear. You thought it was the ground beneath your feet, but it was always just a raft floating on something deeper. The stories we tell ourselves, we are meaning-making creatures. From the moment we're born, we begin constructing stories. Stories about who we are, what the world is, what we deserve, what's possible, what's safe. These stories serve a purpose. They help us navigate. They give us identity. They create a sense of continuity in the chaos of existence. But somewhere along the way, we forget their stories. We mistake the map for the territory, the description for the thing itself. I'm not good enough. Love always leaves. I have to struggle to be worthy. This is just who I am. These aren't truths. They're interpretations. Narratives you've been telling yourself so long they've calcified into reality. And the soul that questions learns to see this. It learns to hold these stories lightly, to recognize them not as facts, but as constructions, as provisional, as revisable. The death of the false self? Alan Watts once said, "The ego is nothing more than a social institution with no physical reality. The ego is simply your symbol of yourself, just as the word water is not the water itself." What a relief that is, because it means that when you question your identity, when you dismantle the carefully curated image of who you think you should be, you're not destroying yourself. You're destroying a fiction, the false self, the persona, the mask you've been wearing for so long you forgot it wasn't your face. This false self is built from external validation, from the need to be seen a certain way, from the fear of rejection, from the desperate attempt to control how others perceive you. It's exhausting, because the false self is never enough. It's always comparing, always performing, always afraid of being exposed. But beneath it, beneath the performance and the pretense and the protection, there's something vast, something that doesn't need validation because it's not looking outside itself for proof of its existence. That's the real you, not the you that's trying, but the you that simply is. The freedom in I don't know, in Zen, there's a concept called Shoshin beginner's mind. It's the practice of approaching life with openness, eagerness, and without preconceptions. Even when studying something familiar, you approach it as if for the first time. Because the moment you think you know, you stop seeing. I don't know is not a confession of ignorance. It's a declaration of freedom. It means you're no longer imprisoned by your past conclusions. You're no longer defending a position. You're no longer attached to being right. You're available. Available to what is. Available to what's new. Available to truth, even when it contradicts everything you believed yesterday. This is the essence of spiritual maturity. Not having all the answers, but being comfortable with not having them. The questions that set you free, so what do you question? Everything and nothing. Start with the beliefs that cause you suffering. I'm not lovable. Is that true? How do you know? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? Where did this belief come from? Was it yours or was it given to you? Success means money, status, achievement. Does it? For whom? Says who? What if you removed those markers entirely? Would you still feel the same drive, or would something else emerge? I have to be strong. I can't show weakness. Why? What are you protecting? What would happen if you were vulnerable? Is strength really the absence of feeling? Or is it the courage to feel everything? These questions aren't meant to give you new answers. They're meant to show you that the old answers were never absolute. They were choices. And choices can be unmade. The space between. When you question deeply, there's a moment of suspension, a gap, a pause, a silence where the old story has dissolved, but the new one hasn't yet formed. This space terrifies people, because in that space, there's no identity to cling to, no narrative to follow, no certainty to comfort you. But this space is sacred. It's the space of pure potential, the space where transformation happens, the space where the soul remembers it was never limited to any single story. The mystics live in this space. They call it different names: the void, the unknown, the divine mystery, emptiness, presence. But all of them point to the same truth. You are not your story. You are the awareness in which all stories arise and fall. And when you rest in that awareness, even for a moment, you touch something that doesn't question because it doesn't doubt. It simply knows. Not with the mind, but with a deeper intelligence. The intelligence of being itself. The practice. So here's a practice. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. And ask yourself, what everything I believe about myself is optional. Don't answer it. Don't try to figure it out. Just let the question reverberate. Let it create space. Let it loosen the grip of certainty. And notice what happens. Notice if there's a softening, a lightness, a sense of possibility. That's not confusion. That's clarity beginning to emerge. The turning point, here's what you're discovering. Questioning doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. Because the beliefs that can't withstand questioning weren't worthy of your faith. And the truth that remains after all questioning, that truth is unshakable, not because it's rigid, but because it's real. The soul that questions becomes free. Not free from life, not free from pain or challenge or uncertainty, but free within it, free from the tyranny of unexamined beliefs, free from the prison of borrowed identities, free from the need to know everything in order to be okay. You're learning to trust not the answers, but the questioning itself. And in that trust, something ancient and essential awakens. Here's what no one tells you about freedom. You don't create it. You remember it. Beneath every layer of conditioning, beneath every belief you've adopted, and every fear you've inherited, there's something that was never bound. Something that existed before you learned language. Before you knew your name. Before you understood what it meant to be separate. The soul. Not the soul as a religious concept. Not a metaphysical proposition you have to accept on faith. But the soul as direct experience. As that which is aware. As that which remains when everything else falls away. This is what you're returning to when you question. Not a new destination, but an ancient home. The witness, in meditation traditions, they speak of the witness. The part of you that observes your thoughts without being them. The part that notices your emotions without being consumed by them. The part that watches the drama of your life without identifying as the character. The witness doesn't judge, doesn't interfere, doesn't need anything to be different than it is. It simply sees. And in that seeing, there's a profound freedom. Because when you realize you are the witness, when you experience yourself as the awareness that holds all experience, you understand something revolutionary. You are not trapped in your story. You are the space in which the story unfolds. Your thoughts come and go. The witness remains. Your feelings rise and fall. The witness remains. Your circumstances change. The witness remains. This is what the soul that questions discovers. I am not the content of my consciousness. I am consciousness itself. The great letting go, freedom requires release. Not the release of effort, not the release of care, not the release of responsibility, but the release of control, the release of the desperate need to manage every outcome, to predict every possibility, to protect yourself from every pain. You've been holding on so tightly, holding on to your beliefs because you think they keep you safe. Holding on to your identity because you think it keeps you real. Holding on to your pain because you think it keeps you connected to those who hurt you. But what if you loosened your grip? What if you let the thoughts come and go without needing to control them? Let the feelings wash through you without needing to fix them. Let the circumstances unfold without needing to force them. This is surrender, not surrender as defeat, but surrender as trust. Trust that life doesn't need your constant interference to unfold as it should. Trust that you don't need to know everything to be okay. Trust that the uncertainty you've been fighting is actually the ground of all possibility. The paradox of seeking. Here's the paradox that every spiritual tradition points to. You're seeking what you already are. You're searching for peace, but peace is your nature when you stop disturbing it. You're searching for love, but love is what you're made of when you remove the walls. You're searching for freedom, but freedom is what remains when you stop imprisoning yourself with unexamined beliefs. The soul that questions discovers this paradox. It realizes that the search itself was part of the story, that there was never anywhere to go, nothing to become, nothing to achieve, just something to remember. You were always whole, you just forgot. The Sufi's secret in Sufi poetry. There's a recurring theme, the journey back to the beloved. But the beloved isn't somewhere else. The beloved is closer than your jugular vein, as the Quran says. Closer than your breath, closer than your heartbeat. The separation was always an illusion. You thought you were separate from the divine, from truth, from peace, from yourself. But you were only separate in your thinking. When the questioning dissolves the false boundaries, when it reveals the stories you told yourself about separation, what remains is union. Not a union you achieve, but a union that's revealed when the illusion of separation falls away. This is the secret. You were never apart from what you're seeking. You only believed you were, living from the soul. So what does it mean to live from the soul? It means living from that place of awareness rather than reaction. Living from presence rather than pattern. Living from truth rather than conditioning. It means pausing before you speak and asking, is this me talking? Or is this an old wound? Is this my wisdom? Or is this someone else's voice I internalized? It means feeling your feelings fully, not indulging them, not suppressing them, but allowing them to move through you like weather through an open sky. It means making choices from clarity rather than fear, from love rather than lack, from wholeness rather than the desperate attempt to become whole. This isn't easy, because the patterns are strong, the conditioning runs deep. The ego is loud and convincing and terrified of losing its grip. But the soul is patient. It doesn't force. It doesn't demand. It simply waits. It waits for you to get tired of the performance, to get exhausted by the pretense, to finally ask the question that opens everything. Who am I really? The question beneath all questions, that's the question, isn't it? Not what should I do, or what should I believe, or how should I live, but who am I? Not who you've been told you are, not who you think you should be, not who you're performing as, but who you are when all the stories fall away, when you're not trying to impress anyone, when you're not defending anything, when you're not running from anything. Who are you in the silence, in the stillness, in the space between thoughts? That's not a question to answer with words. It's a question to live into, to explore, to discover, to reveal through the practice of being present to your own existence. The practice of presence, this is the practice. Come back to now. Again and again and again. When your mind wanders into the past, into regret, into resentment, into what if I had done it differently, come back to now. When your mind rushes into the future, into anxiety, into planning, into what if this happens, come back to now. Feel your breath, feel your body, feel the aliveness that pulses through you. This moment, just this one. Not because the future doesn't matter, not because the past isn't real, but because this moment is the only place where you actually exist, the only place where choice is possible, the only place where the soul can be felt. The soul lives in the eternal now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. And when you rest here, when you stop constantly leaving yourself to chase thoughts and fears and fantasies, you remember who you are. You remember that you are not the story. You are the storyteller. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. The freedom that remains, and in that remembering, there's freedom. Not freedom from life's challenges. Not freedom from pain or loss or difficulty, but freedom within them, freedom to be fully present, fully alive, fully yourself. The soul that questions becomes free, free to be uncertain, free to be wrong, free to change, free to let go, free to live without the crushing weight of having to be perfect, having to know everything, having to control outcomes, free to simply be. And that, more than any answer, is what you've been longing for all along. So here you are. The questions have done their work. The old certainties have crumbled. The false self has been seen through. And you might be wondering, now what? This is where most spiritual teachings leave you hanging. They tell you to let go, to surrender, to dissolve the ego. But they rarely speak about what comes after. Because what comes after isn't another destination. It's a different way of walking. Living the questions. The soul that has become free doesn't stop questioning. It just questions differently. No longer from desperation. No longer from the need to fix or control or know, but from curiosity, from openness, from the genuine wonder of being alive. The questions become lighter, less heavy, less loaded with the weight of your entire identity. What wants to emerge here? What is this moment teaching me? What would love do? These aren't questions that demand immediate answers. They're questions that invite you to lean in, to listen, to be present to what is rather than what you think should be. This is the art of living questioningly, not doubtfully, not anxiously, but openly, attentively, with the humility of someone who knows they don't know everything and the wisdom to be okay with that. The practice of becoming. You've been told all your life to become something, become successful, become loved, become worthy, become enlightened. But what if becoming isn't about addition? What if it's about revelation? Like a sculptor who doesn't add to the stone, but removes what's unnecessary, you don't become free by adding more beliefs, more practices, more achievements. You become free by removing what was never yours to begin with, the false beliefs, the borrowed identities, the protective layers that once served you but now suffocate you. And what remains is not nothing. What remains is essence, core, truth, you, not the small, defended, fearful you, but the you that exists before fear, the you that's spacious enough to hold all experience without collapsing, the you that was there in childhood before you learned what you were supposed to be, the courage to be ordinary. One of the most liberating realizations is this: you don't have to be special. The ego wants to be special. It wants to stand out, to be recognized, to be more than, better than, different than. It's exhausting. The soul doesn't need to be special. It already knows it's enough, not because it's superior, but because existence itself is enough. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to earn your place. You don't need to become extraordinary to matter. You matter because you exist. That's it. That's the whole truth. And when you let that land, when you really let yourself believe that your worth isn't conditional, a tremendous weight lifts. You can stop performing, stop striving, stop defending. You can just be ordinary, present, real. And paradoxically, that's when you become most alive. The integration, freedom, isn't escape. It's not transcending your humanity. It's not floating above the messy, complicated reality of being human. It's integration. It's bringing the awareness you've cultivated into every corner of your life, into your relationships, your work, your daily routines, your struggles. It means feeling anger without being consumed by it, feeling sadness without drowning in it, feeling joy without grasping at it. It means having difficult conversations without losing yourself, making mistakes without collapsing into shame, saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. This is the work, not the dramatic spiritual awakening, but the quiet, daily practice of remembering who you are when everything in your life is trying to make you forget. The relationship revolution. When you change your relationship with yourself, everything else changes. Your relationships become more honest because you're no longer performing. Your work becomes more meaningful because you're no longer chasing external validation. Your choices become clearer because you're no longer making them from fear. You stop tolerating what diminishes you. You stop forcing what doesn't flow. You stop pretending everything's fine when it's not. Not because you become harsh or rigid, but because you become honest. You honor what's true. You respect your boundaries. You trust your inner knowing. And the people who are meant to stay will appreciate your authenticity. The people who aren't will fall away, and that's okay. Because you're no longer living to keep everyone comfortable. You're living to stay true. The gift of uncertainty. You've spent so much energy trying to eliminate uncertainty, trying to predict the future, control the outcomes, know what's coming. But uncertainty is not the enemy. Uncertainty is possibility. It's the space where anything can happen, where life can surprise you, where grace can enter, when you're certain you're closed, fixed, rigid. When you're uncertain, you're open, flexible, available. The soul that has become free learns to dance with uncertainty, to see it not as a threat, but as an invitation to trust, to let go, to be present to what is rather than what you wish was. This doesn't mean you stop planning or preparing. It means you hold your plans lightly. You prepare without attachment. You move forward while remaining open to change. Because you know that life is wiser than your plans. And sometimes the best thing that ever happens is the thing you didn't see coming. The return. There's a famous Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The tasks are the same. The person doing them is different. This is what freedom looks like. Not an escape from life, but a full, present engagement with it. You still have challenges. You still feel pain. You still make mistakes. But you meet them differently, with more space, more compassion, more trust. You've questioned your way into a deeper truth, and that truth changes everything while changing nothing. The world is the same. You are transformed. The invitation forward. So where do you go from here? You keep questioning, keep listening, keep choosing truth over comfort. You practice presence. You practice honesty. You practice coming back to yourself again and again. You stumble. You forget. You fall back into old patterns, and you forgive yourself. You start again, you remember. Because this isn't a destination you reach. It's a way of being you cultivate, moment by moment, choice by choice, question by question. The closing, the soul that questions becomes free, not free from life, but free to live it fully, free from the prison of unexamined beliefs, free from the tyranny of other people's expectations, free from the desperate need to be anything other than what you are. You are enough. You always were. The questioning didn't make you enough. It just helped you remember. So keep asking, keep wondering, keep opening. The questions aren't the obstacle. They're the path. And the path doesn't lead somewhere else. It leads here, to this moment, to this breath, to this singular, unrepeatable, infinitely precious experience of being alive. That's the freedom. That's the becoming. That's the return. Welcome home.